I'm 85 years old, and the world you were born into is officially dead. They didn't announce it with a siren. They announced it with a polite smile in Davos. This morning, as the elites gathered for the 2026 forum, they didn't talk about saving the system, they talked about replacing it. Mark Carney and the architects of this new world order aren't planning your future. They are liquidating your past. If you think you can just wait this out, you are already a ghost. This isn't a transition, it's a foreclosure. Look at your life, your savings, your sense of safety. All of it was built on a single, fragile word. A word they used to keep you working, hoping, and quiet. That word is order. Order is not a law of nature, it's a contract. And today, the system has decided that you are too expensive to keep on the payroll. I've heard this silence before. I felt it in August 1971, when Nixon tore up the world's last tie to reality. I remember the air that day. It was heavy, thick with the smell of ozone before a storm. People went to work thinking their money was made of gold. They didn't realize it had been turned into ink and air while they slept. They were still holding on to the old order, while the new one was already carving up their lives. Stop. Breathe. Look at the red numbers on your screen. You are making the same mistake now. You are watching the fragmentation and the geopolitical shifts on the news like they are a movie. They aren't. They are the sound of the foundation cracking beneath your feet. The system doesn't need your permission to change the rules. It only needs your blindness. When you hear them talk about the end of the era at Davos, they are telling you that the guarantees are gone. Institutions you trusted, the banks, the treaties, the very idea of a stable life, have been moved to the discard pile. I saw my father lose everything in a single week because he believed the system was too big to fail. He sat at our kitchen table, staring at a ledger that had become a fiction, waiting for a normal that never came back. This isn't a drill. It is the liquidation of the contract you thought was permanent. The system is moving on and it isn't taking you with it. You can stay in the burning building and hope for a miracle, or you can admit that the order you worshipped was just a lease that has finally expired. Remember this. Order is a luxury the system can no longer afford to give you. The ghost of 1971 is a Sunday evening in August. I remember the smell of charcoal from the neighbor's grill and the humid, heavy air of a summer that felt permanent. I was sitting in my living room when Richard Nixon's face flickered onto the screen. He didn't look like a man committing a heist. He looked calm. He spoke about protecting the dollar and temporary measures. He used the word order like a sedative, promising us that by cutting our last tie to gold, he was making us stronger. He was lying. He didn't just change a financial policy that night. He killed the truth of reality. He replaced the solid with the invisible. He took a world anchored in something you could hold, something that had weight and history, and turned it into a world of air, ink, and trust. I remember looking at the $20 bill in my wallet the next morning. It looked the same. It felt the same. But the order it represented had shifted. It was no longer a claim on wealth. It was a claim on a promise. And a promise is only as good as the person who makes it. For 50 years, you've lived in the shadow of that Sunday night. You've built your lives, your families, and your dreams on a foundation of floating certainty. You thought the order was a mountain. You didn't realize it was a balloon. And in January 2026, as the leaders at Davos announced the start of a new world order, all they are doing is letting the air out. They are telling you that the trust has run out. When Nixon cut the tether in 1971, it was the first act of the liquidation. It allowed the system to print its way out of every crisis, to borrow from a future that hadn't happened yet. But you can only steal from the future for so long before the future arrives at your door with an empty hand. That is what Davos 2026 is. It is the future arriving to collect the debt. I saw my father's generation struggle to understand why their hard-earned savings started to buy less and less after 1971. They blamed the oil, they blamed the unions. They didn't want to admit that the order itself had become a predator. Now, you are doing the same thing. You are blaming the fragmentation, the trade wars, and the geopolitics. Stop looking at the symptoms. Look at the source. In 1971, they took the gold. In 2026, they are taking the trust itself. The new order isn't a new set of rules for you to follow. It's the sound of the system closing the books on a debt it never intended to pay. You are still holding on to the receipt for a world that has been sold for scrap. The system didn't break in 2026. It just finally stopped pretending it was fixed. I used to think I was an architect of the system. I was wrong. I was just the scaffolding. For 40 years, I carried a leather briefcase like it was a holy relic. I had a title, a mahogany desk, and a pension plan that felt like a stone-clad guarantee. I believed in the social contract. I thought that if I gave the system my youth, my sweat, and my absolute loyalty, the system would provide me with a permanent place in the order. I wasn't just a worker, I was a shareholder in the American dream. Or so I told myself. I remember the exact moment that mirror shattered. It was a Tuesday morning. No alarms, no drama. Just a letter in a plain white envelope. It informed me that due to a structural realignment, that's the language they use when they're about to rob you, my pension was being restructured. Decades of promised security vanished in a single paragraph of fine print. I went to the office ready to fight, ready to demand the order I had been promised. But the man behind the desk didn't see an architect. He saw a liability. You are sitting there right now, thinking your expertise makes you untouchable. You think your contract is different. You believe that because you've reached a certain tax bracket or earned a certain title, you have a seat at the table. But at Davos 2026, they aren't setting a place for you. They are deciding which parts of you are worth keeping and which parts are surplus. The New World Order they are whispering about isn't a new set of rules for your benefit. It is the formal cancellation of the contract you've been paying into your whole life. The system didn't fail me in that office 40 years ago. It functioned perfectly. It used my utility until the cost of my security became a burden, and then it simply deleted the file. I see you in 2026, checking your 401k and your benefits package, thinking the order still cares about your service. It doesn't. To the men in Davos, you aren't a citizen with rights. You are a data point with an expiration date. Your education, your professionalism, your years of doing the right thing, those aren't shields. They are the blinders they put on you so you wouldn't see the butcher coming. My regret isn't that I lost the money. My regret is that I let my ego convince me I was special. I let a title on a door define my worth to a machine that doesn't have a soul. I spent my life building someone else's fortress, only to realize I was standing on the outside when the gates closed. The system doesn't owe you a future. It only owes you a receipt for the past it already stole. The New World Order is a term designed to make you feel small. It is a title for a movie where you're an extra, meant to be moved, taxed, and eventually edited out. But I've lived through 85 years of their great transitions, and I've learned one thing. The only order that matters is the one you can touch with your own hands. If the leaders at Davos are declaring the death of the old system, then let them bury it. It was never your friend. Your mission isn't to fix their world. It is to stop being a variable in their equations. True sovereignty begins the moment you stop asking for permission to survive. In 1971, when the gold was taken, the men who thrived weren't the ones who begged the banks for a solution. They were the ones who realized that the order was now a fiction and started building a reality of their own. They bought land. They mastered trades. They built networks of trust that didn't require a digital handshake. They stopped being citizens of a global machine and became masters of their own micro-world. Take a long look at your surroundings. What is yours that doesn't require a password? Sovereignty in 2026 isn't about isolation. It's about insulation. The system wants you centralized. It wants your money in its banks, your data in its clouds, and your survival tied to its supply chains. That is how it keeps you loyal to an order that is liquidating you. To break the cycle, you must decentralize your life. You must move from the paper wealth of 1971 and the digital utility of 2026 into the world of the tangible. If you can't hold it, you don't own it. If you can't fix it, you don't control it. If you can't trade it locally, it has no value when the new order decides to change the rules again. I'm an old man, and I have seen the fire. I watched the guarantees of my youth turn to ash and I saw the contracts of my middle age be shredded by men who didn't know my name. But I also saw the people who refused to be broken. They were the ones who realized that chaos is just a word the system uses for an environment it can no longer control. For them, the end of the world order wasn't a tragedy, it was a release. Don't be the ink they use to write their next grand illusion. Be the hand that writes its own story. The order they are building at Davos is a cage with a new coat of paint. You don't have to live in it. You can build your own fortress of resilience, one skill, one connection, and one physical asset at a time. The world isn't ending, it's just changing owners. Make sure the owner of your future is you. The system is closing the gates of the old world. Make sure you aren't standing on the inside when the lock turns.